Hey guys, this is Insurance and Finance Live, special end of the year edition. I cannot wait to have this show because we have not four guests, but let's say friends sitting around you could also meet at an insurance or finance conference around the world. We have Sabine Vanderlinden. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me here,
And
Robin.
of course, the awesome Florian Graillot.
Hi everybody. Thanks for being there.
And of course, Dr. Evi from Zurich, when I can remember correctly.
Yes, yes. I mean, how did you switch from, these other origin names to Greece, right? I hope it's not Greek to you. So I'm Effie and I'm in Zurich, and tonight it snowed. That's why I have this white background.
I'm pretty sure our next guest does not share a snowy story because Tunde from Africa. So how have you been so far?
It's nice to be here, Robin, and great to be here with everyone. Good to see you guys.
What can you guys expect? So don't forget to share, like, and comment, and ask questions to this prominent audience. What can you expect? We will look at the year 2022 from our different regions, backgrounds, industries, and we'll also look into the future. Of course, we had this little light bulb. We asked what's going to happen, and that's what we're going to do. My question first, maybe let's start with Tunde. When you look at the industry in your region, how would you describe it in 2022, and what do you make out of it?
Okay. All right. Thanks, Robin. Very quickly, I think if I split it into two parts, when I look at the insurtech side and look at the insurance side, right? There's been overall some level of general growth. When I say that, we cast back into 2021 and basically looking at the funding landscape. The first thing is I think we saw a growth of approximately about 1.8x. The year is not over yet, but last year was closing with about, on the insurtech side in terms of funding, was closing with about $39 million. And this year so far, it's on about $63 billion, right? So that's like 1.8x in terms of growth. On the incumbent side, very massively, we saw very sporadic, should I say, joint venture partnerships, right? So we had the likes of Sanlam and Allianz, coming together to forge a partnership to increase geographical access, to increase scale, and to create new and better products that are relevant for the African ecosystem come together. And with that, they're looking at a GEV value of about 2 billion euros, which is massive, right? We still saw them also partner and acquire a local insurance company in Nigeria, which is called FBNI Insurance. So all this is the bid to aiding and abetting, deepening penetration, and increasing, how products get into the ecosystem. In terms of funding mechanics, it's exciting as well, because on the innovation side, the insurtech side, we saw a couple of things happen. New players coming to fund the likes of Harlem Capital. Our good friends, who I'm sure we all know here, Jay and Caribou, first investment in an African company called Lamy, which is doing fantastic stuff. Which brings me, by the way, to the fact that, the ecosystem is thriving with very, very smart women-led, innovative companies in insurance, the likes of MTech Services, Lamy, Naked, which is led by Sumari Graby, and also Rosalind Woodlitz-Pula. So it's interesting times ahead. We've seen that gradual steady growth. And finally, I'd like to say that, we were able to host a maiden event, thankfully, to ITC at ITC Vegas earlier in the year, in September precisely, with NMW, which gave a platform for local startups and innovative companies to be able to, present on the global stage what it is that they're doing in the African climes to the rest of the world. So that's changing the level, the game to another level, bringing, a lot of spotlight onto the innovation that's happening in Africa at large. So it's been a very interesting year. We look forward to, a prosperous 2023.
I cannot wait because before the pandemic, I saw a lot of events popping up in Africa, and I was like, "Oh my God, we need now to go to Africa and have get some insurtech and fintech events also to get some inspiration." Because at some points it's even way far ahead, for example, from good old Germany. So I'm really looking forward, maybe next year, to see that. Sabine, how was 2022 for you, and what do you see in the UK, but also globally?
Yes, thank you, Robin. So, I have probably a very global perspective, even though I live in the UK. And I want to clarify to everybody, yes, I'm French. I have a Dutch name.
No, Sabine.
And I speak good English. Let's just clarify that.
Okay.
So how was the year? So I think when you look at my perspective, I tend to look at insurtech within fintech, and then I look at it as well as tech within the overall ecosystem of startups. And so let's just start, I think, with fintech. So when you look at fintech today, fintech has raised over $674 billion over the past, I would say, 12 years. And last year, 2021, was a really good year for fintech. 150 billion were invested, and insurtech as well. And insurtech represents usually 10% of the overall number. So insurtech raised around 17 billions. When you look at 2022, that has gone down. I'm sure Effie will echo what I've said, in the sense that we estimate that by the end of the year, around $100 billion will be invested into fintech startups this year, 2022. And that will represent around, I would say, around 8 to 9 billion for insurtech. So globally, numbers have gone down. I think investors have put money in portfolio startups which they think have good product market fit, reliable. But because of interest rates, inflation, cost of capital, a lot of investors have shied away from, I would say, Series B, the bigger startups, to actually put their money, like a Florian, in the early stage startups. So what I've seen in terms of trend is we have been talking about embedded insurance, embedded finance. When I look at the numbers around embedded finance, 42 billion has been put into embedded finance, and this is growing actually. Insurtech is a slot of that. When you think about embedded finance, you need to think about alternative lending, payments, banking tech, and actually insurtech is a fourth bigger market from a terms of investment. And as you probably all know, that I took a little slide of embedded insurance and focused on embedded health, which is really cool. And we can start looking at, not only about sales and distribution, but how platforms are changing the way we serve the customer. So that is my first major trend, in the sense that we can't just look at sales and distribution. Everybody loves to talk about sales and distribution. Embedded is more than that. It's about platformification, as a service model, monetization, and then it's also about digital ecosystem. Who are you going to put on your little app, your friends, which are going to build really unique proposition for the customer? The second major trend for me was future of work. 45 million people have left good jobs in the United States. I just have the numbers for the first quarter of 2022 for the UK, but 250,000 people just left jobs. Let's just not talk about people who may have lost, but left good jobs. And what you start seeing is people are looking for work-life balance. So they are looking for an environment where they have more choices. And I think all of us will look at much more portfolio careers, where we work with a number of companies. And one of the key stats, I think, for this year for me is actually 71% of people, if you ask them whether they would want a pay increase, no, they don't want a pay increase. They would rather, have a great job with purpose than get a pay increase, which I thought was an interesting stat. We can't hear you, Robin.
Yeah, it seems that you are on mute. That's a perfect way to end the year.
Yes, unmute. Before we go to Effie's view on the year, I really like your take on work-life balance and all of that. A friend of mine always is kidding. He says, this whole debate about yoga classes at 1 o'clock will end with 10% inflation and mass unemployment. My hypothesis is that the time of work-life balance is over, and now hustling is back because it's now a matter for survival, especially in countries, for example, Germany, where the average income and the average net worth is so low. One might not think, but it's actually really low. And so my question to the round, maybe I'd go first to Iffy, is do we actually really see that? Is that something we really see, or is that something that just ended? But Iffy, how was your year 2022, and what do you see in finance and fintech?
I mean, it's like, how can I say, dynamic. There's a beat that never stops. We're on the tip of our toes continuously. There's so many news, a lot of them, unpredictable, if you want, because why? Because these trends are complex. Everything is complex these days, right? We live in unique macroeconomic conditions, and finance is really at the heart of any economic activity. That will never change, no matter what infrastructure, no matter what digitalization, and therefore it is affected, it reacts. There's this interaction, between the real economy and where we are at in finance, how we are serving the customer, and how we are manufacturing these services. So for me, there's those two big fronts, where and how we serve the customer. And a lot of that has to do with embedded finance, which was a very big topic and continues to be. In 2022, it was mainly about embedded banking, accounts, deposits, and all that. The low basic level of consumer banking, we have a lot more to sort of make happen ahead, which has to do with more embedded lending, more embedded wealth is at a very early stage, embedded insurance is at a very early stage, and all that has to do with serving the customer where they're at. And the customer, it's not only retail, it's also businesses, right? And then there's the manufacturing behind the scenes. That has been changing too. So 2022 was a fantastic year in terms of moving forward at the infrastructure level. Think central bank digital currencies. We saw a boom in live CBDCs across the world, China being the big country, and then there are smaller countries, Nigeria in Africa, the Caribbean countries, and there's so many more pilots and so much research and interest, even from BIS, which is doing fantastic job. And we have the perfect example from India, the UPI infrastructure that has shown the network effects that are possible when the public is collaborating with the private sector. So here we had a publicly funded infrastructure for payments that has unlocked immense value in the economy. There's two or three other things for 2022 that are worth highlighting. One is that neobanks, challenger banks, whatever you want to call them, right, that are a very mature and crowded subsector of fintech.
I have a question.
Yes.
Neobanks are really hurting traditional banks. At least in 1 mile radius, 7 retail branches closed down. I think neobanks are that. But in InsurTech, to be quite honest, InsurTech are not hurting the insurers yet. What can we learn from FinTech to a little bit fight the insurers a little bit more?
Well, let me tell you something. There's huge regional differences, right? So it's different if we look at Brazil. It's different if we look at the UK, if we look at the US, if we look at Asia, Southeast Asia. So I can't give you a blanket answer for that. But what I can tell you, in the Western world, right, the developed world, the neobanks, what they have done is they have pushed and forced the incumbents to digitalize faster. So in that sense, they have impacted financial services a lot. Whether people are switching, people continue to have multiple service providers,
Yeah.
banking providers. I'm sure you guys have 3 or 4 already. So it's kind of a not, set in stone picture, but definitely there has been a huge effect in the market. The other 2022 fact is that all these B2C businesses, neobanks are B2C businesses, have their valuation has been hammered, right? And any business that the monetization model is transaction based has suffered, and I don't foresee that it will recover in the next year or
All
so.
right, that's interesting.
We are talking B2B is more, has more potential for open finance, for building ecosystems, for being part of platforms and the embedded finance trend in general, where revenue sharing is possible, and many other side effects. And of course, yeah, go ahead.
Let's discuss this a little bit, because I see a lot of similarities to InsurTech, because not only the valuations have been hammered, but also almost all public traded InsurTech have been slaughtered. I'm not sure who invested at some point in something, but my depot is deeply red, and it's not because my favorite color is red or the color of my bank is red. It's actually not. It's orange. Go ING. You said the valuations won't recover for a year. What do you guys all think about the level of valuation of traded companies and non-traded companies? Do you think we will see another all-time high in InsurTech and FinTech valuation?
Yeah, maybe
Can I
I
add?
can highlight with the
Sorry, Florian.
InsurTech perspective, but I think that there are two things. So first, and obviously all the market went down. So whatever the industry, in financial services, in technology, in fintech, in InsurTech, so every company all of a sudden got hit by in terms of valuation. If you have a look back at multiples, for instance. Multiple of revenues to value the company, the public companies. You see that there was a surge in 2021. And that's basically the kind of chart that we see whatever we are analyzing. So in terms of investment in InsurTech, in FinTech, in private equity, on public market, it seems that obviously there is a huge drop from 2021 to 2022. But if you consider 22 more broadly, you can see that it's rather we are coming back to the long-term trend. And that's what we see in InsurTech, for instance, where depending on how you analyze the activity in InsurTech investment, you have different views. If you consider only euros invested in Europe, obviously there is a drop, huge drop. If you consider the number of rounds announced, it's up. So that's basically something that we see on the market, and that we try to share with the with incumbents. For instance, is that okay? You can read newspapers saying that the market is frozen. That's true at later stage, but it's not the end of innovation. And I think that this is not the end of innovation. It's true not only in insurance, where InsurTech is still in early days compared to FinTech and compared to other industries, but it's true more generally. Technology is just at the very beginning. We see more and more customer moving online. You raised the impact of neobanks on brick and mortar banks. That's something that we will see more and more in other industries as well. So again, I think that we are rather trying, or the market is trying to find the right balance between valuation and values after craziness from last year and a very specific year, rather frozen this year. So I expect that at least around the summer next year, things should come back to not a normal, but find a better balance between craziness last year and frozen market this year.
Sabine, you want to also say something?
Yeah, I would say let's just remember that, yes, market has crashed, but if you actually look at the companies still doing pretty okay, they still remain the incumbents. Check IBM, ABN Bev. If you are checking those tickets, you will see incumbents still doing pretty okay. And so, and then when you start looking at really who is within the tech world, on the Fortune 500, you will see there's not many young ventures on there.
But Sabine, Fortune 500. Sorry, so one thing, and let's go to it. But Fortune 500 from 2000 to 2020, 50% of all Fortune 500 companies went broke or were bought or went under. So
No,
I think
the statistic is different. Between 1955 to now, 85% of the companies which was in the 1955 Fortune 500 is gone. But I think if you look at the numbers behind, you will see a lot of it has been acquired by bigger companies. So at the end of the day, you know, when you even go into startup world, what is your goal is exit, right? To be acquired by somebody else. And so I think we just need to be a little bit careful around those numbers, because if you really go behind, for sure they are gone, but a lot of them have been acquired.
Okay,
I echo that. Robin, I was just looking recently at the fintech index that NASDAQ has launched, you know, more than 5 years ago. And if you look at that, all the fintechs that are publicly listed are like down huge, you know, 50% is the average. And the index is doing fine. Why? Because incumbents like Visa and MasterCard and those guys are doing fairly well. They're in the positive, right? While these guys are down. And then if you look at the index, it has changed composition because of acquisitions. So, you know, in a way, ironically, nothing has changed. But if we look at these incumbents like Visa and MasterCard, they have really got it and are transforming themselves. They're keeping up in a way with the market. So innovation is like a bug that has, you know, infected some of the big incumbents. In fintech, that is very true.
Let's look into next year. Tunde, great that you are back. Let's look into next year. What can we expect next year? What is your hypothesis? I also want to drop two topics. Is COVID dead, finally? How about the economic development in your region? And third, last but not least, inflation. Have we seen the end, or is the light at the end of a tunnel, the train coming, hitting us? Tunde, do you want to go first?
Okay, Robin. First and foremost, I mean, still piggybacking from 2022, what has happened is, you know, the end user or the customer's pain points has evolved significantly, right? Now, when you look at that pain point, because there's a lot of you know, variable indices, which I won't bother to go into. I mean, the cost of inflation, the COVID, which has created a cataclysmic effect. Also, purchasing power, or should I say the ability to be able to purchase goods and services, right? All that has given a derivative of, you know, emerging insurance, should I say, economies, like the concepts of buy now, pay later, you know, is unfolding very quickly on the continent. The concept of pay as you use or pay on demand. I mean, we're seeing, we have the likes of debutants of a company called One Spark based in South Africa, who is trailblazing on what we call pay as you use life insurance, which is actually crazy. I love the way they're going about, you know, their own innovation, and the concept of personalization, you know, continues to deepen, right? And we have companies that are doing a lot of heavy lifting, you know, doing that, as opposed to what was happening about 3 to 5 years ago. Now, when we look at all that, you know, the emerging economic trends, we look at the evolving pain points of the customer. As we move into 2023, what we have analyzed is, first of all, we're going to see more stellar innovation, right, that is coming to partner with existing incumbents, right? Because one of the key things that has happened in 2022, for instance, is the incumbents realizing that there are different parts of the value chain that can actually be outsourced, as opposed to, you know, traditionally being taken in-house or internalized because of regulation or legacy systems. So that will drastically change. We're predicting that within the region, we should be able to have an unlocking of about 13 million new policies, right? If given the projection by McKinsey, which is estimated to be an annual compound growth rate of 7% year on year, right? So that means that with our own derivative from that, hopefully we should be able to unlock conservatively those numbers. The third thing is, the third thing is if we look at consolidating.
I'm laughing because we have a very qualified comment on YouTube with a new private dating chat. It's really funny that in our show on insurance and finance nerd topic, some bot tries to land that scam. So don't click on that. It's really funny. Thank you for the algorithm. But I have a funny feeling that my wife sitting here does not want me to click on that. Sorry, Tunde. Let's go. Inflation, COVID, innovation. Thank you, Tunde, for your view on this. Ify, what do you see from the fintech perspective on that? What is your take on 2023? Inflation and all of that.
I'm of the opinion that inflation has peaked. That doesn't mean that necessarily it will come down, but I think that we've seen the worst of that. What is on my radar is the changing behavior of consumers because of the macroeconomic situation. So it's perfectly possible that we will see new behaviors in terms of payment preferences, be it, maybe cards come back, maybe cash comes back, so to speak, because people want more control and direct contact with finances. So in general, behavior will change. How much it will affect fintech, that is a big question. I foresee that we're going to have more innovation in what I like to think of as smart wallets. I mean, mobile wallets definitely have been on the rise, especially in e-commerce globally. And again, by region, it differs, but they have a huge, if you want, lead compared to credit and debit cards. But I expect to see a lot of innovation because mobile wallets are very programmable and interactive. So they will allow to do the customization and personalization that is needed in these tough economic environments. So more choices for the customer, easier stuff. That's what I think. And then in general, the financial services providers, the incumbents, the journey to the cloud will continue. We had huge gains in 2022 in a recent report. I think it was from Finastra. They reported that over 50% have moved to the cloud. That is huge gains in 2022 for financial services. That will continue. And therefore, we're going to see better use cases of AI in fintech.
We only have a little bit left because I know all of you guys have a lot of things to do. I want to get to one point. If he said cloud, I have an hypothesis. Who of you guys knows Andrew Tate? You don't know him? The most Googled man on earth, like this guy who was canceled, who has a big social media following. Fun fact, fun story, he was the most Googled man on earth. And he had a certain system where he made a lot of money with online courses, and he got canceled because of, let's put it, controversial stance on gender and these things. And my hypothesis now is not a statement on his statements, but it's more about what happened. And he got canceled like on one day. All social media companies blocked him, but also a cloud provider did. And so they did not only cancel his ability to publish this on Twitter, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on TikTok, but actually they crushed his IT infrastructure. And that was the moment when I thought, if I would be a banking or insurance CEO, if they can cancel such a person, I definitely would rethink my cloud strategy, because you could also imagine a cloud provider just writing you a weird legal letter and say you cannot access your client things anymore. If they do it with such a person, why shouldn't they do it at some point in a controversial situation with an insurer or bank? So I'm working on an article that says, did Andrew Tate kill the cloud? So is cloud still yeah, it's a cloud.
Cloud is political, Robin. That's the answer. Cloud is political. So everybody in their mind is going to choose, jurisdictions and providers that have data centers that are local and on and on.
Correct.
But I think that's a good point you said. But Sabine, you also nodded.
Yeah, I do agree with Effie. Cloud can be seen as political. So if you look at the leaders in cloud computing, and then you look at Europe, you need to actually understand that businesses, to be European compliant, they need the clouds to be localized, and they need to follow a number of rules around data, amongst others. And then when you look at what the EU says, companies need to move to a multi-tier cloud. So who are you going to give your money to, right? When you think with no names, to all the cloud providers which are there, right? The recommendation is every businesses need to have a multi-tier cloud strategy, whether it's hybrid, private, or public cloud, right? The mix of. And the main reason is to create resilience and to make sure that when one cloud gets kaput, you can save your data on the other.
Yeah, and I think it's a big point, and I think those cloud providers who participated in this blocking of this person and others, that was not a smart political move, maybe for a moment, but I think I would go for the cloud provider who did in the past not do things like that. But let's.
By the way, if I may just add one thing, because that also creates opportunities in an insurance perspective, because as let's say any player, incumbent obviously, but if you take any platform, e-commerce website, they are heavily relying on their IT infrastructure, not only a cloud operation, but I'm thinking about a payment infrastructure, for instance. If Stripe is done in the evening, all of a sudden, Uber, Deliveroo, and these guys are doing zero of turnover. So that's a kind of new risk which is surging in terms of dependency between the IT infrastructure and the business. I'm not speaking of an e-commerce website. If your e-commerce website is not, let's say, available even during a few seconds, that's potentially millions of euros of turnover that are missing. So that's also an opportunity where insurance, insurtech, technology, data provider could work together to make that move to the cloud and more generally reliance on IT infrastructure more reliable and more sustainable in the future. Beyond all the
this is that interconnectivity, right, Robin? And from there, everything is interconnected. And I think it's very important for us to remember. I mean, I don't know whether you were affected, but last year, right, there was one big cloud provider, email stopped, and then we were drinking coffee for 4 hours. So, cloud outage is going to be a great emerging risk and a great opportunity. And some startup already touching upon that right now for our industry.
All right, and I think we had a great point. It also shows we should continue this in the next year, not in December, but before. I would love to go one last round for everybody, saying, what are the 3 things he or she expects from next year? Maybe only in 3 times, 3 words. I think when it comes, let's do that. I will have the last word, I think. Sabine, 3 words, 3 things next year.
In 3 words, God. People, embedded, and algorithmic. And 3 things is that, everything is going to be interconnected. We need to be mindful that we are moving to a creator economy world. Like we used to say gig, now is creator. And all of us will need to start working better together.
Florian.
I would go for insurtech in underwriting to stay focused on insurance. I would say the comeback of Series A plus rounds, VC investing more, and again in startup at later stage. And the third point is I expect a kind of wave of M&A from incumbent taking an opportunity of the current market.
Iffy.
I'll add M&A, fintech M&A between fintechs and incumbents. Openness for me continues to be a huge driving force. Thinking of connected economy in a much broader sense than just financial services, and AI.
Tunde, how about you?
I would say shifts, innovation, and partnerships, right? So that would be an acronym for SIP, right? So I believe that there's going to be a lot of sipping, within both the insurtech and the incumbents, right? I think there's going to be a zone of transformational impact, right? Particularly on my side of the fence, right? There's a lot of things that are still burgeoning, and I think a combination of these three things, will birth new economies and new markets.
Very good. What do I see? I see the end of COVID, maybe not for the German Minister of Health, but I think for the rest of the world. I see inflation. I'm not sure if we have seen the final effects of it yet on societies. I have a funny feeling that can be actually catastrophic. I think there will be IPOs in 23, 24 in InsurTech. I'm pretty sure about this. And I really hope that there will be a lot of hugging of all of us at the next events, so let's hug more in a lot of sense. InsurTech should hug incumbents, FinTech and InsurTech should more work closely together. And of course, all you guys watching right now, we see you. Like, share, comment this debate, and also follow everybody here on social media, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and of course, Evi and me on TikTok. Thank you very much all for being here. You're all on TikTok.
They're following you, Robin. So we're
Very
all
good.
on TikTok trying to be our best now.
Very good. Very good. Yeah. Thank you very much, guys. Have a great end of the year, great Christmas season if you celebrate. Can't wait to hear you next year in 2023, and let's do some crazy stuff together. Thank you very much for being here.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.